best way to describe my work, it's that I see them as kind of this machines, this machinic assemblies, and it's as obviously goes back into Deleuze and Guattari. But I see them that they have this life, right? That they're multiple, you know, the meanings that they don't depend on their identity itself, but sort of kind of the way the things are put together. So and then this assemblages and how drawings kind of are built from other drawings and so on. So what I'm trying to argue here is that the drawing itself is valued for what it can do rather than what the drawing essentially is.
Design Minded Episode 3. We are with Bea Martin. Thank you, Bea, for joining us in the interview.
I'm delighted. Thank you.
So let's start from your journey as an architect. What inspired you to become an architect in the first place?
Well, I think that was the most direct journey possible because I think I wanted to be an architect since age 5. You know, probably didn't call it architect, but it was about drawing and drawing houses and cities and it all started with that. My passion for drawing and drawing all the time.
So did you have any influence from your family?
Yes, well, yes and no. I do come from a family that's quite artistic. So art, design, and all sort of kind of subjects are quite sort of kind of the environment I grew up. But I think I was very set on being architecture from very early age.
And while being a student, I know like after you graduated, you worked with a lot of prestigious firms. Start when also you were a student, like by internships or something like this?
So I did my undergraduate in the 1900s. So some time ago. So time and sort of kind of the teaching and learning of architecture was at least where I went to school was slightly different. So I've studied my undergraduate was in Portugal, in School of Architecture in Lisbon. So it was quite, you know, it was 5 years straight. But I was lucky to have sort of kind of you know, little sort of kind of bits and pieces of work here and there with professors and sort of kind of a whatever. And because it was not just about architecture, I was interested in research back then already. So I had quite a few opportunities to work alongside my degree, and it was a really long degree. So yes, I think it's just different from England that you have your part 1 and you break, you have your 3 years and then you go and you work. No, we had it sort of kind of in one swoop. Now, regarding sort of kind of working as an architect, so yes, I did qualify as an architect. I'm a British architect. I worked quite a few years. But could you repeat, like if it was
Like
a connection while studying or
yes.
right after you graduate?
Like what, for example, I know that you worked with the prestigious firms. So some students think that in order to be able to work in the prestigious firms after you graduate, you have first to do some internships in very big firms before.
Right.
And if you don't do like these internships, you don't have any chance.
So I did none,
Mhm.
right? I did none. I didn't even study in the same country that I actually practice. So obviously the journey for everyone is different. You know, there's some journeys that are similar to others. But I think mine was very detached from the academia. I've completed my degree and I wanted to move to a different country and experience, you know, the city and the practice of architecture in a different environment. I think if you're asking what to do to get into sort of kind of to work into a what we normally call a star architect, I think, you know, and this is what I tell my students, right? It's really about being yourself. Now, if you're really passionate about something that X, Y, and Z architect does, obviously it's going to be natural that you're going to tend to work, and your portfolio is going to be very much sort of kind of a modeled into that sort of kind of lines. But I think the most important thing is to really work out what we are and who we are in the study and sort of in the learning of architecture, and have in mind that most of those really great practices and sort of companies and prestigious firms or star architects, wherever we want to call them, they're also looking for people that can, you know, young people that can come and tell us, you know, this is what we're doing now, right? You know, not just, okay, this is what we do and we'll carry on doing this. So it's a blend of the two.
Mhm. That's great. So, what are the key lessons that you would share with the audience from working with different companies and different people, different schools or approaches?
Okay, so there's two questions there, right? So one is would be, you know, working in practice, and the other one is sort of kind of the academic sort of kind of a life, and those are
Yeah,
different.
like I thought of, you know, I think of architecture studios as kind of school itself, because each office has its own what we call école, like approach to design and so on. So I didn't mean the academia, but I meant
Okay, okay,
yeah.
okay. So because I actually find it very different. Um, so I worked for, you know, I spent 15 years of my life in practice. You know, that was my sort of kind of it's kind of my foundation, mostly because that's how I thought, you know, it would sort of kind of be. Although in my mind I always wanted to teach, so the passion was that. Now I was very lucky to work for Rogers. This was a long time ago. But I was even more lucky that I worked closely to the great Mike Davis, where I feel like that's where I've learned so much. But you know, practice was not my thing. So I was really interested in the beginning of practice, and, you know, that sort of conceptual stage that you investigate. And of course, what happens in bigger practices that, you know, can actually spend more time in that sort of kind of a stage is that it becomes more exciting, right? Um, Other practice that I worked is that was almost inexistent, because in the end, practice will turn sort of kind of into the economic and the financial sort of kind of element of the production, and that for me really didn't go that sort of kind of well. So I think if I have a key lesson is that it's a different type of discipline, right? And I don't think there's a right or wrong. There's about, you know, a few sort of kind of elements that students, when going to practice, have to understand. It's business, right?
Mhm.
And there has to be a sort of kind of an at ease with that, right? You're doing a job. There's a set of elements of your discipline, you know. It's not like tomorrow I can't go because I don't feel so, you know, there's a commitment, because, you know, there's other elements that affect an entire team. I mean, and I know this is to every sort of kind of an element, but I think that's what I'm trying to make the distinction between academia and the studio, and the environment of the studio, and in the academic sort of kind of environment and the studio, and then the different types of practices, really, that you may be working for.
Mm. I have a question, and I believe you're the best one to answer. this question because you have been in the practice for a long time, and then you also have been teaching for a long time as well. So do you think that everyone who works in the academia should be first in practice for architecture? Because, you hear some students saying, okay, this teacher, he's a great teacher in architecture school, but he has never built anything in his life or her life. So what is your take on this point? Because a lot of students are discussing this.
So I'm a rebel in that point. Okay, so, and I say it, and I do have that experience, right? So I do it. So I'll, if you don't mind, I'll go a little bit back. So just to contextualize then my response. So when I went to study, my undergraduate, the School of Architecture in Lisbon it's very sort of kind of it's about architecture, about the built, sort of kind of being sort of a craftsman, and the art of building, the detail. So the mindset is that you go through that process to become an architect, a practitioner. Okay. So now towards, part of there was something there that it was just, I just didn't had escape, right? There was not the critical mass to make sort of kind of a conversation on that level. So that's what I understood. And then yes, that's what I did. I went into practice. But over 10 years into it, I decided to go back to school, and I went to Berkeley for a master's. And that was it, right? It was the extreme from my first school to the other one that was about think about things. We don't care where the fire extinguisher or where sort of kind of the rate of, yes, you tick the box and you have some studios that are comprehensive, but it really is about the thinking and opening the subject of architecture to many other things, right? That it's really a way of thinking about space rather than just the sort of kind of the practicality of constructing, of building. So that puts me now in a position that I can tell you both ways. I did it both. I started as an architect. I have that experience. I can say, yeah, you can do, and you have that. But maybe you don't need it, right? I think the point that we are at the moment, I don't think students need to engage with practicing to the built sort of kind of environment in that sense. What happens is that you can't be an architect if you don't do that, right? You can't call yourself an architect because architect is a title that is protected, and you have to have, sort of kind of a checklist to prove that you are able to engage with the profession of architecture. But if you're interested with the criticality of space, with the theory of space, with the history of space, with the potential and the possibilities of a future, where space is so important to engage with, then maybe, unless you specify on the materiality and sort of kind of the realization of that sort of speculation that you might need sort of kind of more technical sort of kind of a background, maybe you don't need it. Now, this is a little bit sort of kind of edgy to say. I teach in an architectural school, a very good architectural school, I must say, and that engages with the profession of architecture to an excellent level, right? My job there is a little bit of just kind of rocking the boat, right? And say like, well, but you can also think about this in this way. So I'm not directly answering your question because I don't think it's a black or white sort of kind of an answer or yes or no. I think it's a journey. So yes, today I said like I knew I always wanted to teach. Maybe all those years maybe didn't add, but I think they do. I think the beauty of our profession is that it's the layers that you add, right? So everything that you do, even the things that you go like, yeah, I could have like, missed that. I think they build, and we know that architecture is really that library of precedents in your head, right? but it's also experiences, it's also mistakes, it's also like wrong turns, you know, all that builds you differently. And I think it's more joyful. So
That's
I
a great
don't have
answer.
really one.
It's a great answer. I really enjoy listening to your answer. Thank you. So let's move to speculative assemblies. Do you think, first, I'm curious about its story, and do you think it's a turning point for you, or it's just, the continuity of your path somehow?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And I've never been asked in that sort of kind of a almost timeline frame. So thank you. Yes, it is. It is. It is. It was a turning point. So when so I'm a Londoner, and I went to the States, and I've studied, and as I said, you know, going to Berkeley and the opportunity of teaching there is a change. So when I moved back, I was a completely different person, right? Practice was just not on the cards anymore, right? So I went through this sort of kind of metamorphosis. I don't know if that's the right, but to try and find. So I was trying to find what was the channel, right? I knew it had to do with drawing because that is my great passion, but because of the tools that I was given, you know, the opening of critical thinking and sort of kind of the engagement with literature and other elements, you know, I just started going on this path that I didn't know where it was taking me, and it was scary. It was joyful. Because I made a lot of mistakes because I did not know what I was looking for, right? And you know, and I don't think I know yet. It's still forming. And that's one of the things I tell my students is this, don't be afraid of this unknown, you know, because you might stumble. So speculative assemblies, it I think it's my attempt of trying to sort of kind of verbalize, right? This sort of kind of an interest in exploring drawing as a practice. And I should say visual construct because drawing has that charge that it feels that it's just a surface with lines. But it's really about this conceptual investigation where where I sort of kind of bring this conceptual investigation with continuous research and this sort of kind of intense interrogation, right? And at the same, it's really a kind of almost like the verb of unpacking and unflashing and fleshing out sort of kind of the possibilities of thinking about architecture through drawing. But I'm trying that sort of kind of in a nutshell.
So like your work focuses heavily on the apparatus of drawing, right? You mentioned that it's a visual construct to kind of verbalize architecture. So you see it more architectural than artistic, right? And what is the philosophy behind these beautiful drawings? Like when I was a student, I was fascinated by this kind of drawings. I didn't know how to do them. I don't mention the tools, like the meaning behind them. Because I wasn't given this education. My education also was kind of technical and focusing on tectonics and so on. So, what is the philosophy behind these drawings in general? Or how do you come up with these ideas and how do you visualize them in your mind and start doing
I don't.
them?
That's the thing. So let me just go a little bit, sort of kind of frame it a little bit with some sort of kind of elements that I think important. And I think it starts by how you look at drawing and what drawing can do. So I see drawing as a conceptual and allegorical tool that I have. And it's not about or it's not just about to represent or to instruct,
Mhm.
which, you know, that tends to be sort of kind of the the definition of the drawing in architecture, right? You have an idea and then you represent so people can understand what goes on in your mind and what you sort of kind of wish to design. And then you have another set of drawings that it's how to do it, right? So representation and instruction. Now I have nothing against those drawings. They serve me very well and they're very important. But what I'm really keen is about the drawing as an allegorical tool, right? It's sort of kind of a conceptual tool that helps me explore ideas. Sort of kind of a way to think through problems, sort of kind of to delve into sort of kind of this speculative and experimental kind of possibilities in pushing the boundaries of what architecture could be, rather than saying this is what architecture is, here's my drawing, right? So it is an artistic expression, right? Obviously, and because the drawing allows for a personal and poetical engagement with architecture, because beyond the act, you know, the act of drawing itself becomes the form of the artistic creation, right? And I'm trying to be very careful with the word artistic and architectural, but from an architectural point of view, sort of kind of it is an architectural tool, the drawing. It's indispensable tool for the way sort of kind of that the way design and visualize spatial relationships and forms. But I think I use drawing to explore and critique more than just creating blueprints. So I'm interested in challenging and redefining sort of kind of this possibilities of architecture. So it becomes a medium of theoretical and exploration, artistic expression, and but still grounded in architectural sort of kind of life. Now, if I go back into sort of, you know, my drawings per se, so I think the best way to describe my work, and you know, it's that I see them as kind of this machines, right? And you know, this machinic assemblies, and it's obviously goes back into Deleuze and Guattari. But I see them that they have this life, right? That they're multiple, you know, the meanings that they don't depend on their identity itself, but sort of kind of the way the things are put together. So and then this assemblages, and how drawings kind of are built from other drawings and so on. So what I'm trying to argue here is that the drawing itself is valued for what it can do rather than what the drawing essentially is, right? And that this assemblages. So if you look at the drawing itself as this set of assemblages, there is sort of kind of this relationship between them and this enabling that the drawing has the potential of becoming other, right? So it's the time there is because it's you frame it, you know, sort of kind of there's that time freeze, but then they can continue and then they become others. So concepts or ideas for me can be triggered by a flurry of different sort of components and places, words, music. So it's really sort of kind of a not one thing or the other.
Your answer actually brought to my mind a book I was reading called like Visuality for Architects. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, like Brankovic. So the author of the book was saying that architecture is about visual, in essentially it's a visual art somehow. So he was criticizing that a lot of schools are trying to force students to force meanings into their drawings, and the author claims that there is no need for this kind of, you know, exaggerated theories or, you know, philosophical interpretations of drawings, because you might appreciate it the way it is without like really having to think about. I don't know if I could explain it very well or not, but my question is, because I might misunderstood your answer as well. You are also a lecturer at Manchester.
Yes.
So how do you handle the students in your studio or in your lessons? Do you really expect every one of them to, you know, tell you, okay, this is my drawing and this is the theory or the concept behind it? Or you just focus on the visual aspect of it and appreciate it the way it is?
Yeah, I'm going, let's park that point of you know, the comment from the author. And I'll try to respond in a different way. So I have this wonderful role at the MSA, which is to lead the inscriptive practice and future processes group. And it's a new thing. There's really no precedent. But the idea behind it is that I would bring a sort of kind of a different set of kind of questions to the journey in architecture, right? So, so I think that would go against what the author of that book says. So actually, that's my job, is the meaning behind things. That so the way I framed it, sort of descriptive practice in the architectural sort of education in context. It's something in a line referring to sort of kind of the evolving methodologies and technologies that we use for representation, exploration, and realization of the architectural ideas, because that's what we do, right? We really don't build, right? We draw, we create. So there's this emphasis on the transition from the traditional modes of inscription to innovative and speculative approaches that address the future of architectural design in practice. So if you want to really engage with future questions, then your tools must also, you know, be questioned. Now we have an amazing set of, you know, our toolbox is full. There's so much to pick from.
Mm.
But if you don't engage in a way that you're driving and you're asking the questions and you are the one deciding on which tool you're going to use and how you're going to use that tool, then what's the point of the superficiality of the output? Is it just for the gaze, just to enjoy that maybe makes us feel happy, or you know, it's speaking on some sort of kind of a sensibility or reaction from us? So I'm actually very interested in the meaningfulness of the work that we do. So my teaching, and just in that, so the integration of this sort of kind of is essential to preparing students to navigate the complexities of contemporary and future architectural challenges, because that's where we are at the moment. You know, I'm sort of this new generation coming in. You know, it's going to deal with quite a lot of elements. So actually, my teaching philosophy is very simple. I'm interested in what makes a student as a unique thinker. That's what I'm interested in, is the student as a thinker. What are their concerns? What they're worried about, or what do they love? What do they are interested about? And then my job is really to look at them as individuals. Yes, we work as a community. We need to understand that the world works. We're not just working on our own. But we cannot also not look for the individuality of every one of us, right? Because that's what makes it beautiful. So I feel that my job is to finding their passion and then garnish them with the skills, right? And not telling them what to do, but with kind of pointing out that there's this here and there's this there, and then they can actually explore, and they can experiment, and they can sort of kind of turn their idea in whatever they want. So it is that guiding. It's guiding their pursuits and filling in the gaps of knowledge, and opening new doors, expanding their horizons, because that's what university should be, right? That to find things that you don't know.
I believe your students must be lucky to have you as their mentor and instructor. So I want to move to one point. How would you keep the balance in your life between having your office, your teaching position, you are also a writer, doing a lot of things. So how do you keep the balance between all of them?
Is that one of those questions? Do what I say, not what I do. So yeah, it's difficult, right? Because this is not. I always believe that, well, every profession or every sort of kind of a subject area, more than a profession itself, it's not a 9 to 5 job. Yeah, it's with you. It's part of you, right? It's part of sort of kind of your own skeleton, sort of kind of. It's with you. So balance is always something very, very tricky to get. For example, I live in London and I teach in Manchester.
Mm,
It's a 3-hour train, right?
mm.
But where do I see the balance? I love what I do, right? So my balance is about that sort of kind of there's things I give that, you know, are tricky, but I get others that I really love. And and I think life is about that balance. Nothing is all perfect. And if that's what you're striving for in your life, that's going to be very difficult. But it's about balancing, your wishes and your dreams with the complications and the strives of life and all that, and having this sort of positive thing to strive for. Now, I'm not in office, right? I'm a proud full-time academic, right? Um, so do you ask about the writing and how do I engage with the writing and
Yeah, like
the drawing?
yes, and writing, and also you're teaching. You're also like you have your own works. I believe it's kind of independent from the studios and so on. So it's a lot of things, and you have limited time. I know that you live in London and you're going to Manchester, so it's very hard to manage, isn't it? Right?
Yes, as I said, it's really this sort of kind of a balance of wishes and things that you really love,
Mm.
and try to balance with the trickiness of, you know, um, getting sort of kind of to that point. And I think in life we have to be prepared for that.
So one question, it just came to my mind right now. I didn't prepare it for this episode. Like, what do you think AI is going to do for the future of architecture? Do you think it will have really a dramatic change, or people are just exaggerating?
So I see it in an intellectual level. I'm concerned. So I'm not concerned as a tool, because we've been here before, right? There's been many tools that have changed, and redirected and reorientated our civilization, right? And, the way we do things. So we shouldn't say no to progress or evolution. Now, what I'm concerned about is how we use the tools, right?
Mm.
So if you do not question, if you do not interrogate, and if you do not look at that as a tool that maybe can sort of perfect your work and can sort of kind of help you. But if you lose the critical spirit, then I think it's really dangerous.
Mm. And do
And
you
you can
think,
see it. You can see it, right? You can see when it's something that it's AI generated.
Yeah, somehow. For now, I don't know about 10 years later.
Yeah,
For
no, yes, absolutely. We're still talking in the present, isn't it? And you know what maybe could be.
the problem is like maybe this leads us to the point where you talked about meaning. Like you can feed AI with a lot of drawings and ask it to design or generate something similar to them, and it will give you like tons of drawings and buildings and whatsoever. And they look nice. They look, they look
But
architectural normally, but they don't have meaning behind them.
but I
So,
think the word there would be rigor,
mhm,
right? So I think our concerns start when there's a sort of an output that generates a rigor that was not input by us, like rigor. Now, when you look at a drawing, there is a set of codes that you know that you're aware. There's a craft to the drawing, and it can still be digital produced. Um, but that is actually the armature, is the rigor that you use those codes, and when you break them, you know the rules. You know that there's a rigor, there's an intention, and a craft to it. So I think the tool, I I have no issue with the tool. It's exciting, um, but it's the same way as when you do renders, right?
mhm,
You know, it's been like everyone has exactly the same renders because you just know the ABC to do it, right? So there's no rigor there. It's just a function,
mhm.
right? So I'm interested how we can manipulate those tools to excel, you know, to exceed expectations. So I'm positive about it, but I'm concerned that we as a being are lazy. We're lazy, right?
Yeah,
You know, if
that's true.
there's something that can be done for us, we will. And the first thing that counts is that we don't really want to use our brain as much.
Yeah.
And that is what concerns me, because, you know, the ability and the faculty of being critical is fundamental for our species.
That's a great point of view. And I'm moving to the next question, which is an advice you think to be important for students and young architects to be ready for the future, to improve themselves, or something that you would tell yourself to your 25 or 20 years old self.
So I'll say the things I tell my students, and you know, I think they can vouch for it. The thing that I'm most sort of kind of interested in, and I really fight for it, is that students need to take advantage to be in school. There's this rush of just getting it done, and it's the number at the end. If I was in charge, to be honest, there was no first, there was no numbers, it was pass or no pass. That was it, right? And because that's not the point. And with that, it becomes a sort of kind of a list ticking the box of things that you just say, yep, do I know that? Yep, do I know that? And we're missing the most exciting thing, that is actually the opportunity to not having a boss saying that you have 2 days to get this done or else we're going to lose money, right? So it's engaging with the school to discover new ways of thinking. I'm against teaching a student that this is how they should be doing because that's what practice wants. No, I want to teach this generation to go into the workforce and change practice, right? Because it's not perfect. So if I'm conditioning to students to say then, well, this is how we do it, so you carry on doing it, and that's how you get a job, then who's going to change for the better? So school is fundamental, and you need to mess it up. Everyone's too clinical and tidy. Mess up, make mistakes. Don't be because it's in those mistakes that you're going to actually find wonders, right? But I think there's little of that now engaging in schools. I think if you don't have, if you're not given the opportunity of do things wrong, if students don't lose this fear of getting things wrong, to explore, to experiment, so when are they going to do that? Right. So it's really about, I think, not to expand more, but if I could just summarize it, it's really about students embracing the unknown, just tough, because discovery does not arrive with instructions.
No, like each word that you have said might be expanded a lot. I know that you're super busy. That I don't want to occupy a lot of your time, but you reminded me of something I've been thinking about when I was a student, especially when you say like students are in a rush, they're taking like they want to finish and so on. So, like Da Vinci and the great artists in the past, sometimes it took them years and years to paint one painting only. But maybe it's our age because, our age pushes us to finish or to be productive. This word, I believe it's very dangerous. To be productive, you have to do a lot of things. Otherwise, you would have this imposter syndrome. You will feel very bad. So, yeah, I feel the students, they all feel bad because they don't do a lot of accomplishments in their life and they see others on Instagram doing a lot of things. Maybe not all of it is essentially true, but yeah, I can understand their point. So, how do you think students can overcome this conflict, the psychological conflict?
Oh, no, absolutely. And I in no way I'm blaming the students, right?
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
a want. This is a want. And schools are different, obviously, but there is and I don't want to get political or socially sort of kind of active, at least not being
yeah,
clicked on. um, but it it's really sort of kind of it has to come from the students wanting something, right?
mm,
Um, and I think they are. I think this generation is a generation that voices, what they think, what they feel, what they want, and that's really good. Um, but we have to look at our environment, right? Going to university costs money, right? So what is and in the end it's becoming a transaction. So I go and I get this because then I can do X, Y, and Z. And again, I'm not looking at this in a sort of kind of a way. This is the reality, right?
mm,
There is a set of skills that you have to do, especially if it's a professional degree. You know, you have to prove that the students know how to do X, Y, and Z. Um, my point being is that I think we're at a crossroads where I don't think that model is the best model, right? I don't think I believe that architecture is so much more than that, right? Architecture is a way of thinking and engaging. We are people that have this ability to crisscross information from, theoretical, technical, digital, work, design. I mean, you name it, right? We're able to connect all those dots. And of course, we're good at one or two and less good in one or two. And that's also good, right? The generalist, that's wonderful, but that's it. It's a generalist. I like the spikes. I want to see where students spike and what they can actually bring to the profession and the practice of architecture. So I think this is a job that we need to do to expand the possibilities and allow students to actually not being afraid of making mistakes. Because or else, how would you cope in a life that you are bound to make mistakes? This is just nature, right? It's okay. We learn a lot with mistakes. So why wouldn't we be sort of fortifying and sort of kind of arming, our students with this confidence that making a mistake, there's beauty, there's novelty that can be found by making mistakes, rather than working a project from the end backwards. I know what I'm doing, now I'm just filling the gaps. So I think that's the point I'm trying to make. Now, say that just one more thing. I do not indoctrinate anyone. It's not my way. On the contrary, I think everyone should try and find, what makes them fulfill. And some students of architecture will do amazing in practice. But other excellent students will not do amazing in practice because that's not the route that they should go. And I think that's okay too. So
that's very relieving, yeah, for a lot of students, sometimes including me, because kind of similar situation. I don't like, or I don't like. It's not my priority to be a practitioner as well. I'm in love also with academia. So yeah, speaking with you today was very relieving for me personally. Thank you so much for this enjoyable conversation. I'm sure that the audience would like it as well. Is there any
that's very
last
kind.
word you want to share with the audience?
I want to thank you.
Thanks.
I am, I'm always excited with, what colleagues like you, young colleagues like you do. And this is wonderful, because it's bringing different voices, and that's what builds our tapestry of life. We cannot be just in one silo and thinking that this is what we believe and this is what it has to be. So the more voices, the more different voices come, the better it is, because it builds us in a more colorful way. So I think because this is a wonderful sort of way of channeling and providing that opportunity for the young
Thank you.
generation.
Mentioning young, I believe I wouldn't say drawings, I would say your visual constructs reflects your young soul as well. So you are way younger than me. I can say that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, see you then in the next episode, all of you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.